Hi, and welcome back to our discussion on the empath leader. I'd like to take today to clear up a misconception about those of us that actually feel feelings. And that's that our kindness is a sign of weakness, and we are actually pushovers, marshmallows, spineless, willless, to be walked on, human doormats. That is not the case, however, and I would actually argue that to be a kind leader takes strength, greater strength than to be the other way. So let me ask, empath leader, are you a pushover or are you a paladin? Let's find out. Most empaths can relate to this situation. You have a friend, you have a coworker, a sibling, somebody, right? And they do something. They push your boundaries. They say something nasty. They do something like borrow money and not pay it back. They do something. And you as an empath try to relate to them and their situation. And you say, well, I understand they're having a hard time. Well, I kind of understand, they've got this stuff going on in their family and they've got this stuff going on at school, and I'm sure they didn't mean it. But that person, instead of appreciating your kindness as the gift that it is, instead takes it as an opening to take advantage of you. And it happens again. Nobody likes to be taken advantage of. Nobody likes to be put aside as the stooge. So what gives? There's actually some psychological and social reasons why this happens. So let's start there so you can recognize it. There are those people out there who are people pleasers. And let's be clear, because you're an empath does not mean you are a people pleaser. The two are not necessarily mutually inclusive, right? But there are those that will say yes to anything, just to conform or fit in or be part of it or whatever. So those people are displaying kindness as weakness. And the two get confused. People confuse empaths for those people. Don't confuse yourself. They're not the same. There are those people who will react to kindness out of fear. Sadly, because they may have been hurt by someone who used kindness as a way to reel them in and then take advantage of them. Or they may be insecure. They may not understand why someone's being kind to them, and so automatically they're suspicious. In a way, sadly, it's kind of like a dog that's been mistreated one too many times, and you have to earn their trust, but that dog may not recognize your kindness right off the bat. There's a lot of wounded people walking around out there. There are those who are just judgmental and cynical and jaded. And there will always be those. And maybe if they see that you do this consistently, that maybe you actually are just a kind person. You don't have an ulterior motive. And there are those that see putting the needs before themselves as weak, which is kind of ridiculous. It's actually a communal behavior. It's not weak at all. It's thinking of the whole, creating a wholeness of the team, not weakness. Sadly, there's a small percentage who sees kindness as a feminine trait and equates femininity with weakness. But just as we can't say all women are kind, we can't say all men are unkind. That's ridiculous. So to say that because you're kind, you're feminine, and because you're feminine, you're weak, holds no water. So that one's just dead in the water, right? We're not even going to talk about it. It's just sad that there's people out there like that. Finally, the smallest, but probably the most destructive group are those that are actually truly predatory. And an example of that, as we talked about a couple videos ago, are those dark triad people. And those are your sociopaths, psychopaths, Machiavellians, and narcissists. These three maladaptive personality styles are defined by a lack of empathy. So when they see somebody with empathy, they automatically are attracted to them because they see them as weakness. And in an emotional kind of way, they actually feed on that empathy. Unfortunately, you just have to be aware of those. And sadly, even though in the past they'd been seen as a small minority, about 7%, they're actually growing in number, especially in certain fields like high leadership positions and politics. So it's something to just be aware of. But there are actual reasons why people think kindness is weakness. They're not good reasons, but they are there. So what is an empath leader supposed to do with this information? Well, this is why in my last video, I spent so much time talking about being the leader of one and understanding who you are and what you stand for. And you can only do that by sitting with yourself and understanding what your values and your missions as this empathic leader are. What do you believe in? What do you stand for? And then stand in that truth. In understanding this about yourself, you can come to understand that kindness isn't weakness and that it actually takes a certain strength to go into the world every day and understand that it's more important to be a catalyst for good than it is to take the easy path and just take and create more darkness in a world that's already filled with chaos. You have to be strong to stand up against that. The other thing to begin to understand is the difference between the people who just act kind or use kindness as a means of defense, and those who are kind. One is an action, one is a trait. Here's the difference. Someone who only acts kind out of a fear of being, not pleasing other people, that's acting kind. They want to be part of the group. This goes back to psychosocial behavior from the beginning of time. If you didn't conform and you didn't fit in with the tribe, or the social group, you would probably get thrown out solo into the wilderness and eaten by wolves. So at one time, it was beneficial psychosocially to be a conformist. It still is to a certain degree, but all the same, that's the difference between acting kind and being kind, right? Another example are those people that are, I'm sorry, and taking blame where it may not even be theirs. Those people are looking to please and using it as a defense. This isn't a defense. This is who you are. So now that we've discussed what kindness isn't, let's take a look at what kindness is, especially for an empath leader. Interestingly, when we talk about empathy and kindness, it's kind of got a third sibling, which is compassion. So the way this kind of works is empathy is what you feel for another person, right? It's not cognitively. It's not, yeah, I see what you're saying. It's, yeah, I feel what you're saying. It's a mutual understanding. That in turn facilitates compassion. And what compassion is a want to do something, right? I really feel whatever's going on with you. What can I do to help? The action that you take is kindness. Compassion is the action side of empathy, which in turn drives kindness. When a person feels like they should act on compassion and that kindness is rebuffed as a weakness, it can have a negative result. And you, in being a leader of one, need to understand this by having sat with yourself. Because one thing that happens is that people will put up boundaries. They won't want to be kind. They'll hold in. And let's make no mistake about this. Empathy is a talent. It's a gift. Just like any other gift, whether it's sportsmanship or musicality or the ability to make a fantastic shrimp etouffee, it's a talent. We all have talents and we all have gifts. You can choose to use those gifts and you can choose to ignore those gifts. But if you've been given that gift and you choose to ignore it, all of society suffers. I'm sure we all know the very famous example of Michael Jordan, right? One of the best basketball players ever. And how in high school, he was not allowed on his varsity team. Michael Jordan. His mother told him that his best action was to go and hone his talent, to get in the gym and do the work. It's the same for an empath. You may not get the results you want right away, but your action shouldn't be to quit. It should be to hone that talent, to sit with yourself, to understand your mission and your values, and to just know that you're going to get knocked down every once in a while. The path of an empath leader is not the easy one, but it is the most fulfilling one if that's what you're called to be. One of the main things that you as an empath leader need to be able to do is set up boundaries, both personal and professional. And that doesn't mean walls, but it means knowing exactly how far you and your employees can go, and how far that is doesn't change. Doesn't change between employees, doesn't change between meetings, is always the same. In doing so, you're not only being kind, because clarity is kindness, right? You're being clear about your expectations, but you're also making sure that it's fair for everyone. You're giving equity and justice through action, and that is kind. It may not be popular. It may not make you the person everybody likes, but it is kind. So be sure you already start to think about where those boundaries are, and that they are non-negotiable boundaries for everyone. Let me tell you, or give you an example, about someone that I knew, a leader, and she thought she was very kind. And as a person, she was. She believed that. But her thing was, everybody comes into my office and vents. I'm so kind because I listen to what everyone says. Well, here's what happened. She had the same 3 people sitting in her office every single day, venting about the same things. Nothing was getting fixed. There were no solutions offered. It was just venting. The other people in the office having to do the work did not see this as kind, because while their compatriots were sitting in her office, they were picking up their work. There was no boundaries. She set no boundaries. It was like a free-for-all. If you didn't work and you sat in her office and drank coffee and complained about everybody else, it didn't matter. It wasn't fair to the people who weren't venting. And it definitely showed that there were favorites, which, conversely, if the other people who weren't part of this clique actually had serious grievances and wanted to come and talk to her, they were not welcome to do so. They did not feel that they could put any kind of faith in their employer at all. It also meant, on the business side, that this boss was so tied up talking to these people that she wasn't out there supporting her team like she needed to be. I mean, let's get to the heart of the matter. We're still talking about business here. This is a value proposition, and everyone is there to do a job. There's a way to lead and a way not to lead within this job, but there's still a job that needs to be done. And if it isn't getting done, that's not kindness. She eventually threw up her hands, blamed her team, and quit. And it was too bad, because she really did have the best of intentions, but she wasn't being kind. The hardest part is that you stand firm in your own truth and values, your authentic truth, your authentic values. You understand that there are those who will seek to exploit your kindness, but you do it anyway, because you understand that there are more out there like you, that are kind like you, than are not. You already understand that as a defender of the people who are also kind and empathic, that you've taken up a standard, like a knight paladin, and this means that you might get battle scarred from time to time. Oh yes, we're back to the paladin. So let's talk about this. What is a paladin? So if you're talking in broad historic terms in like video games or D&D or whatever, it's a knight of renown, known for their heroism. However, in modern terms, it actually has a little different meaning. And what it means is any determined advocate or defender of a noble cause. Listen to this again. Any determined advocate or defender of a noble cause. You are being called to be an advocate and a defender of your people through your weapon of empathy. So you can kind of think of a paladin as like an Uber knight, but with a very specific cause. They're on a very specific quest, such as leading people with empathy and not from dark, destructive, selfish places. And it does take strength. because you have to be willing to take risks such as being taken advantage of, being unpopular, being thought of as unkind, although you're being clear, although we know that kindness is clarity. Even though this might cause conflict, this might be uncomfortable, but that's the kind thing to do. All of this means that you are being driven by your own internal values and you don't just float on the whims of popularity. You are authentic to yourself, to your values, and to your mission. Interestingly, this means we can also be fulfilled as humans, standing firm in our truth and in who we are. We then have to be able to self-reflect on our leadership of one. We can love what we see and not want to hide from ourselves from the shame of how we've treated others. I hear you saying the people that do that don't self-reflect, and to which I would say you're absolutely right. They don't. But we're not talking about them. We're talking about you and what can make you stronger as a leader. And let's be real. As we've talked about, people that lead through dark feelings and a lack of empathy sometimes see great gains in the short term, just stratospheric rise, and they get the bonuses and they get the cruises and they get the promotions and all of that. But they can't keep it going in the long run. Usually they burn fast and they burn out because those kinds of behaviors can't last. So by refusing to be part of that, you have a long-term trajectory going nowhere but up. That's a fantastic reason to continue on an empath path. So what else is in it for you? I mean, other than just being authentic and being able to sleep with yourself at night and understanding who and what you are, being authentic to yourself and being true to your values and mission as an empath leader is paramount. There's no need to put up barriers, which are different than boundaries. Barriers and boundaries are two different things. You don't have to pretend to be something you're not. There's a real strength in living with your own authenticity as an empath leader. It's unrestricted. You know who you are. Now, here's what people don't think about. When you display kindness, it actually releases hormones in the brain. It's called giving you a helper high, specifically oxytocin and dopamine. And everybody knows about dopamine, right? And according to Cedars-Sinai Hospital, they're actually basing some therapy on kindness because it does give you a short high. Now, here's the thing. That high only lasts about 3 to 4 minutes. However, the downside just means you have to be kind more often. And how tragic would it be if everybody we knew was being tragic every 3 to 4 minutes to be able to stay in this helper high? Oh, the horror. Being kind actually reduces feelings of isolation, loneliness, and anxiety. It actually makes us feel more connected, which makes us feel more grounded. It brings people together. It doesn't keep them divided. It creates communities and movements that no single person could do alone. It boosts mood and self-esteem, not just for you, but for whoever you're helping. So it's a double bonus. And on a large scale, it will foster a sense of community. Out of curiosity, how many people out there have seen what happens if there is a community of people surrounding an empath leader and one person walks into that community and tries to take advantage of that leader? I have seen an entire community rise up against that person because their leader was so revered and so beloved because of the way they led. There are more out there like us than not. They just don't always have the courage to show it, right? The Maya Angelou quote from week 1, I believe everyone has empathy. I just don't believe everyone has the courage to show it. We're there in numbers. It's easy to lash out and hurt other people. It's weak to go online and be trolly, right? Because it's anonymous and you just type trash and then you put it in the comments. It's easy and it's spineless. That's why they do it anonymously. So let's be clear. It isn't the kindness that's weak and spineless. It's the nasty behavior. So by being called to be kind, it takes more strength. Look at the politicians who say one thing and do another. Look at the leaders who are able to sell out anyone and everyone in the process of achieving whatever their goals are. It takes strength to resist and to be kind and empathic in the face of just living day to day. And to continue that and be true to yourself without becoming hardened, embittered, or angry. So if a paladin is a determined advocate or defender of a noble cause, and our cause is to lead with empathy regardless of how the nearsighted may see us as weak, then, once again, our greatest weapon is our humanity. So to anyone who thinks kindness is a weakness, they fail to recognize that empathic leadership is anything but easy, and that you, empathic leader, are anything but weak.